Neil Armstrong, not your typical movie protagonist, very inward, very sort of obsessive. He's kind of like the most famous person that nobody really knows. So, what made you want to tell this story?
Well, I think in a way, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's part of the reason.
exactly what you said. You know, that for such a famous individual, an iconic individual, we don't really know the man. You know, we don't really know the family. We don't know him, Janet, his kids, what they actually went through day by day during this period in their life. I think that's what fascinated us, was to try to take a really personal, intimate angle on, one of the most famous chapters in history.
And Ryan, for you, how do you build a character like that maybe doesn't have that big persona, that big, reputation that people know about, like doing like a Chuck Yeager or a John Glenn, where people kind of know the person? What for you as an actor, how do you sort of do that when there's not that trail of breadcrumbs?
Well, there aren't a lot of sort of obvious external, you know, characteristics in that way, like you're describing. But he's a person of such great substance and depth of character that it was. There's so much there to, you know, to explore. You know, it's pretty endless. You know, he's a very remarkable, brilliant person, and in a way, the fact that he was so remote and internal made him even more interesting to me.
Okay. Obviously, you guys are known for the success of musical films, your last two features, in fact. So what made you kind of take this turn into more of a straight drama that didn't have that?
Well, I tried to put musical numbers in this, but
Yes.
it just, didn't.
It just didn't work.
We tried.
Yeah,
you
my
know?
God, did we try?
God, you'll see the outtakes one day, you know. But no, I mean, I think for me, actually, I just started reading about Neil Armstrong, and just, again, it was that sort of untold story that fascinated me, and really, in a way, one thing that I think similar to movies I've done in the past, this question of what the cost of a dream is, what the cost of a goal is. There's no more famous dream in human history, really, than landing someone on the moon, walking on another celestial body. It's as mythic as you get. But what did that actually mean day by day for the people who had to put themselves on the line to make that happen? I think that just it sort of galvanized my attention, and it felt like it would be more than actually just a drama. It felt like it could be a real way of telling this sort of grand cosmic story, but have it be as intimate and up close and personal as like a family documentary.
Yeah, my next question is, Ryan, we've seen you do all sorts of different things in the films. What we haven't seen you do a lot of is portray fatherhood. And I was just wondering how you approached that. Was there a particular reason that you wanted to do that at this point in your career?
Well, it wasn't, that wasn't the main sort of reason to play Neil. There were lots of reasons, that just was an aspect of his life that's, that was interesting. But yeah, it wasn't the main sort of, the main reason.
What was your main reason if it wasn't that?
I think, both Neil and Janet are just extraordinary people whose their lives are worth the tribute that this film attempts to pay to it. That they endured such an extraordinary amount of grief and sacrifice in order to make this possible. As did many of Neil's coworkers and their families, and just hundreds of thousands of people that helped make this possible as well. And it just felt like something that that we sort of take for granted, as though it was a foregone conclusion, that it was always going to be a success. And I was happy to be reminded of all the sacrifice, the personal sacrifice involved to make it possible.
Yeah,
and just to help tell a story of just what an example of what we're capable of when there's enough of a collective will to do something.
Yeah, it's interesting in the film is I think people tend to look at these stories as just as triumph and triumph, then that one setback in the second act, then more triumph, and this really is a story of just setback and challenge and loss, and what people sacrifice. So it really is an amazing journey.
I think it was, it was sort of an opportunity to do, a movie about most famous success in history, but really have it be a movie about not just failure, but how you overcome failure. You know, that as Ryan was saying, not only was it not a foregone conclusion, really on paper, this was an insane idea. You know, to say in the beginning of the 60s, we don't even have the technology to do it, but yeah, we're just going to strap people into missiles and hurl them, and we're going to somehow walk on the moon and return them safely. It's insanity, and yet, because of people like Neil and Janet Armstrong and their kids and the other astronauts and their families, because these people were actually willing to go, okay, hey, you know what? We'll put ourselves in that pilot seat. We'll be the ones to actually see if this can work, put ourselves on the line for that. We all get to live now in a world where we know that that's possible. But that's a great gift that we have thanks to the heroism of those individuals.